Good Shabbos. This week is Parshas Shoftim, and the portion starts off with what seems to be a passage only related to judges and a judicial system, but I think that we could all relate to. What does it tell us? It says that we should appoint judges and officers in all of our cities, and they should judge the people mishpat tzedek, a righteous judgment. You should not pervert judgment. You shouldn't show favoritism. V'lo sikach shochad. You should not take bribery. Ki hashochad ya'aver einei chachamim, because bribery will blind the eyes of the wise. V'salef divrei tzadikim, and make just words crooked, or it could mean that it makes crooked the words of righteous people. Tzedek tirdof. Righteousness you shall pursue, in order that you shall live, and inherit the land which the Lord your God has given to you. So again, simply, it's telling us, hey, you need pure judges. You need officers that are not easily corrupted, that there's no bribery. But we could take this on another level. And very famously, Rabbi Chanan Wasserman said that every 13-year-old boy and 12-year-old girl should be able to have a very strong belief in God. He suggests you don't need to be a great philosopher and thinker. It's obvious to everyone. Now, whether he's right or not is a whole different discussion. But what he's saying, and he goes on to say, is that the reason why people do not come to the correct opinion, do not have the right beliefs, do not believe in God, is because they all have shochad. They all have bribery. What does he mean by bribery? We're all blinded by our material desires, our needs, our wants, our greed, all the things which create problems and undermine a moral and ethical society are the same things which undermine your quest for truth, because you're always blinded by your biases, your prejudices, your stereotypes. And again, whether he's right or wrong in philosophy is important and left for another discussion. But I think that's true for everybody when we're seeking truth. We see that almost every single day, whether it's in politics, whether it's in business, whether it's in family relations. And I suppose I often talk about this because I think it's so important that people do not see what is obvious, should be obvious to them. And when you have an objective person, many times I look at different, what I consider objectively true, and again, of course, I have my own biases, and I can't understand or imagine how somebody else cannot see the truth the way I do. And of course, vice versa. I just had a discussion with someone who said, you only see it your way because you have a bias. You want to understand something. You want to believe something. And therefore, you cannot understand why the other person did not agree with you or sees it from a different perspective. But I think the message, though, we all have to understand is that we all have shochad. We all have bribery. And actually, in halachic terms, it's not actually just taking cash. As it's said even in secular systems, it's having favors. Or perhaps even the fact that somebody is your relative, right? A judge cannot sit in judgment upon someone who's close to them, whether it's a close friend or at least for sure a relative, because you want what's best for that relative. You're going to only see it from a certain perspective. I've seen this myself when sometimes a spouse will defend their spouse who might have done something terribly wrong. And everybody knows it except that spouse, who might be a pure, innocent soul. But that person, whether it's a wife or a husband, does not want to believe that everything that they live for and everything they work for and all their time spent and everything that's sort of built into that relationship could possibly fall apart because they're going to believe something that is horribly wrong with their husband or wife. And it's only when they gain a certain objectivity, when they cannot deny it anymore, or when that person, let's say they divorce, all of a sudden the truth starts spilling inward. They see all the things they didn't want to see before. I like to quote Eric Fromm, and he understands that people have dreams and their dreams are really their sort of their unconscious, or the truth is really speaking to them that they don't want to deal with in everyday life. And the example he gives is, you might have a partner that you've been in business with for 30 years, and you have a dream that you see his hand in the till taking out money. You wake up and you say, not possible. I know this fellow. I trust him for 30 years. Turns out later that he was stealing from you. But in your conscious life, you don't want to deal with it. You don't want to admit it. You can't possibly admit that everything you believed in for all this time was wrong. But deep down, in your heart of hearts, or in your mind, in your dreams, the truth is there. And sometimes we have to be able to take away those filters that blind us, that cloud the truth. And we could look and try to look as objectively as possible. And even if it's very difficult to do that, at least understand that that's the case. And if you understand that, when confronted with someone else who might be passionately thinking something the opposite of what you say, you start to give it, hey, maybe there's something right. Maybe try to remove myself, at least for a moment, maybe even for a few hours. And hopefully that's the way we come to tshuva. We're now in the month of Elul, the month preceding Rosh Hashanah. It's a time for repentance. It's a time to think about what we've done and how we spent the last year and how we move forward. It's a time to sort of reevaluate where we are, to try to remove ourselves from what we experienced for the last 11, 12 months, and try to look at it from a different perspective. And hopefully, if that's the case, we'll come to Rosh Hashanah, we'll come to the Yom Hadin, a day of judgment, and we'll be zocheh, we'll merit to be judged the way we are wishing to be judged, and go into Rosh Hashanah and to Yom Kippur with a pure, innocent soul. Good Shabbos.